Privilege, Part 3. Therefore, coming to our more particular purpose, which is religion rather than ethics, a state of things where all variation has died down, giving place to a uniform dead homogeneity, is impossible so long as life lasts, nor is it desirable. At the same time, there is other side of the fact, which is that this unity already exists. This is a peculiar claim. Not that this unity has to be made, but that it already exists, and that you could not perceive the variety at all without it. God is not to be made, but he already exists. This has been the claim of all religions. Whenever one has perceived the finite, he has also perceived the infinite. Some laid stress on the finite side and declared that they perceived the finite without. Others laid stress on the infinite side and declared they perceived the infinite only. But we know that it is a logical necessity that we cannot perceive the one without the other. So the claim is that this sameness, this unity, this perfection, as we may call it, it is not to be made, it already exists and is here. We have only to recognize it to understand it. Whether we know it or not, whether we can express it in clear language or not, whether this perception assumes the force and clearness of a sense perception or not, it is there. For we are bound by the logical necessity of our minds to confess that it is there, else the perception of the finite would not be. I am not speaking of the old theory of substance and qualities, but of oneness. That in the midst of all this mass of phenomena, the very fact of the consciousness that you and I are different brings to us at the same moment the consciousness that you and I are not different. Knowledge would be impossible without that unity. Without the idea of sameness, there would be neither perception nor knowledge. So both run side by side. Therefore, the absolute sameness of conditions is that if that be the aim of ethics appears to be impossible. That all men should be the same could never be, however we might try. Men will be born differentiated. Some will have more power than the others. Some will have natural capacities, others not. Some will have perfect bodies, others not. We can never stop that. At the same time, ring in our ears the wonderful words of morality proclaimed by various teachers. Thus, seeing the same God equally present in all, the sage does not injure self by the self and thus reaches the highest goal. Even in this life, they have conquered relative existence whose minds are firmly fixed on this sameness, for God is pure and God is the same to all. Therefore, such are said to be living in God. We cannot deny that this is the real idea, yet at the same time comes the difficulty that the sameness as regards external forms and positions can never be attained. But what can be attained is elimination of privilege. That is really the work before the whole world. In all social lives, there has been that one fight in which every race and in every country. The difficulty is not that one body of men are naturally more intelligent than another, but whether this body of men, because they have the advantage of intelligence, should take away even physical enjoyment from those who do not possess that advantage. The fight is to destroy that privilege. That some will be stronger physically than others and will thus naturally be able to subdue or defeat the weak is a self evident fact, but that because of this strength they should gather onto themselves all the attainable happiness of this life is not according to law, and the fight has been against it. That some people through natural aptitude should be able to accumulate more wealth than others is natural, but that on account of this power to acquire wealth they should tyrannize and ride roughshod over those who cannot acquire so much wealth is not a part of the law, and the fight has been against that. The enjoyment of advantage over another is privilege, and throughout ages the aim of morality has been its destruction. This is the work which tends towards sameness, towards unity without destroying variety. Let all these variations remain eternally. It is the very essence of life. We shall all play in this way eternally. You will be wealthy and I shall be poor. You will be strong and I shall be weak. You will be learned and I ignorant. You will be very spiritual and I less so. But what of that? Let us remain so, but because you are physically or intellectually stronger, you must not have more privilege than I. And that you have more wealth is no reason why you should be considered greater than I, for that sameness is here in spite of the different conditions. The work of ethics has been and will be in the future not the destruction of variation and the establishment of sameness in the external world, which is impossible, for it would bring death and annihilation, but to recognize the unity in spite of all these variations, to recognize the God within in spite of everything that frighten us, to recognize that infinite strength as the property of everyone in spite of all apparent weakness, and to recognize the eternal, infinite, essential purity of the soul in spite of everything to the contrary that appears on the surface. This will have to recognize. Taking one side alone, one half only of the position is dangerous and liable to lead to quarrels. We must take the whole thing as it is, stand on it on our basis, and work it out in every part of our lives as individuals and as unit members of society.